Hi everyone, today I will be introducing Git and version control. I'll be talking about how Git works and show how you can use Git inside the command line and do things such as version control. First, I want to talk about version control in its simplest form. So first, let's say I create a new code file. I write a few lines of code and decided to put it under version control using Git. We can call this version 1. As I continue, I write more lines of code and decide to make another save point and call this version 2. And then further down the line, let's say I screwed up my entire code file and I get to the point that I want to delete this entire code file rather than having to try and fix it. Now I just want to go back to the previous versions and I can do that using Git. So I can either compare my current code file with previous versions, or I can just go back to the previous version or the previous version before that. So next I will show how you can use version control using Git locally using the command line. So first let's open terminal, and inside the terminal we're going to navigate to our desktop. We can do this using cd desktop, which means change directory, and as you can see here we're now in our desktop, and then we're going to create a new folder called project. And you can see here that we have just created a new folder called project, which has nothing in it yet, so we're going to create a new file. So first, we're going to cd into our project and then create a new text file called version1. We're going to open the text file and write something in it and save it. So now we can create a new Git local repository and start tracking some of these file changes. To initialize Git, we can type git init. And as you can see here, we have just initialized our empty Git repository inside our project folder. If you look at Finder, we can't see the .git file, but if we use ls-a, we can see all the hidden files and see that the .git is in there, which is going to be used to track all your file changes, commits, and perform version control. So currently we are in the working directory, which is the project directory. And in order to start tracking the changes of my files, I need to add this file to what's called a staging area, which is an intermediate place where we can pick and choose which files in your working directory that you want to commit. To see what's currently inside your staging area, you can use git status. So this shows that there are untracked files, which is shown in red, which is simply inside working directory, but it is not yet in your staging area. In order to add it in your staging area and to start tracking changes in it, we can use the command git add and then write our file name. We can run git status again, and now we can see that the file have been added and it is now in our staging area. Now we can commit this under version control using git commit and use the -m to add commit message. Now this is very important as this can help you keep track of what changes you have made in each commit. So we can name this complete version 1. Now you can see what commits you have made by using the git log command. Over here, you can see when this commit was made and the name of your commit. Now we're going to create two more text files called version 2 and version 3. And I'm going to go in and make edits to these two files. Now all the files have been changed, as you can see here, and we can add these two files to our staging area. If we use git status, we can see that these two files are untracked, which is only in the working directory and not in the staging area. So we can put it in our staging area by adding each of these files. We can use git add.version2.txt and version3.txt. But as you can see, if we have a lot of files to add, this can be very tedious. We can do this by doing git add dot to specify everything in the current directory. And now if we run git status again, We can see that 2 new files have been added to the staging area. Now we can commit these 2 files to a new commit and a new save point using the git commit command line and call this complete version 2 and 3. Now we can check using git log. We can see now that we have made 2 commits, one for version 2 and 3 and the other one for version 1. And if you see here, the head master, this is where we are at right now. So as of now, we have 3 nicely looking hello text file. But let's say if you go into version 3 and accidentally fall asleep on your keyboard and wrote some gibberish on your text file and happen to save it. Now if you look at Finder, it's just random words and you have completely ruined your file. But since we have version control and git enabled, we have nothing to worry about. We can revert the changes that I have made locally in my working directory. We can use git status to see that we have modifications in our version 3 text file that I have not yet been committed or added to the staging area. So if we wanted to, we can revert this back to its previous version. Before we do that, we can use a git command to check out the differences between the current version of version 3 and the last save point in our Git repository. To do this, we can use git diff and our file name, which is version3.txt. We can see that the part in red is what we have deleted and what the part in green is what we have added to the file. Now, if we look at the differences, it might just be that there's only a few mistakes in my new version of version 3.txt file, and I just want to maybe copy some of the things over and have a look of how I did certain things and change my current file. But other times, it might be that you just want to destroy your new file and have nothing to do with it, and you would rather go back to the previous versions. If you want to do that, we can use the git checkout command and then specify our file name, which is version3.txt. And if you look up here, which is our preview of our version 3.txt file, once I hit enter, you can see immediately that my previous version of chapter 3.txt file have been restored. So here, this is the version of chapter 3 at the last checkpoint at which I committed it. So now let's recap what we have done. We created a file in our working directory, which was our project folder, where we initialized our Git repository. When we did Git init, Git is going to try and track the changes that it sees between the working directory and the local repository. Then we used git add to push it into the staging area. The reason we have this intermediate staging area instead of going from the working directory straight to the repository is because sometimes you might not want to commit all of your files. So the staging area is a good place to try and figure out what are the things you want Git to ignore and the things you want it to track. So once we use git add, we put our file in the staging area and we're happy with the changes that we are going to commit. Next, we commit our changes using git commit command. Now our file is inside our local repository, so the .git file and that version is giving a name through the commit message. So that means even if we messed up our file, we can still use the last version that is under version control and use the git checkout command to revert back to the last position in our local repository. So that concludes our quick introduction to Git and version control. I hope that was helpful and look forward to more upcoming videos from Penn Engineering Council.